In part one, we covered what type 1 is, the inner critic, the standards, the swallowed anger, the way you can't fully relax in a room where something is unresolved. You can know all of that about yourself in detail with full self-awareness and keep doing every single one of those things tomorrow and the next year and 10 years from now. Recognition doesn't move the pattern. Recognition is the floor, not the ceiling. So if you've ever wondered why you keep ending up in the same loop, even after every book, every podcast, every program, this video is the answer. We're going to the place underneath the pattern, the childhood messages, the wound, and the actual way through. If you haven't watched part one yet, pause this and go watch it first. This video assumes you already know the diagnostic, the inner critic, the core fear of being bad, the gut center, the subtypes. I'm not going to reiterate everything here. We're building on top of it. And the reminder from part one, all 9 types live inside of you. If you're watching this for someone you love, a type 1 partner, mother, daughter, friend, keep them in mind, but pay attention to what your own system does with what I say. There's almost always something here for you too. Here's where most Enneagram content stops short and where the real work actually starts. Type 1s aren't born with an inner critic. The inner critic was installed carefully over years by the environment you grew up in. The childhood story for most type 1s looks something like this. Early in life, you picked up a message, sometimes spoken, more often communicated through tone, expectations, and consequence. That being a child was not entirely safe. Being messy was not safe. Being loud or needy or emotionally dramatic or wrong was all unsafe. What was safe was being good, being responsible, being the one the adults didn't have to worry about. So you became that very early, earlier than children are supposed to. Maybe you grew up in a household where one parent was unpredictable and being well behaved was how you kept the temperature down. Maybe you had a parent who was overtly critical and you learned to preempt the criticism by becoming impossible to criticize. Or maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. Maybe you simply lived in a family where being good was praised and being human was tolerated, and you drew the obvious conclusion. The mechanism actually doesn't matter as much as the outcome. And the outcome was this. Somewhere very young, you stopped trusting that you would be loved as who you were. And you started building a self that would be loved for what you did. The inner critic was the supervisor of that project, and her job was to catch you being unacceptable before anyone else did. She was, in her original form, trying to protect you. She's still trying, she just hasn't been told that the danger is long past. This is the piece that breaks open most type 1s when they really sit with it. The voice you've spent decades hating, the harsh one, the relentless one, the one you'd give anything to silence, was once a small child survival strategy. She wasn't your enemy. She was your guard, your protector. Now, every Enneagram type carries what's sometimes called a lost childhood message. The specific thing that, had you heard it enough and believed it, would have shaped your nervous system differently. And for type 1, the message is this: you are good. Not you did a good job, not you were good today, not you're good when you behave. Just you are good, full stop. Independent of performance, independent of mistakes, of whether the room was clean and the homework was done and you said please and thank you. You probably heard plenty of praise growing up. Type 1s usually do, but praise is conditional by design. It's a response to something you did. What you needed wasn't praise. You needed unconditional regard. You needed someone to communicate in a way you'd feel in your body that your worth wasn't on the line, that you didn't have to earn your place, that being slightly messy, slightly wrong, or slightly imperfect as a child was not a problem to be solved. Now I want you to sit with that for a second. Most type 1s, when they hear that message stated plainly, have one of 2 reactions. Either they tear up because some part of them recognizes it as the thing that they've been waiting their entire lives to hear, or they bristle and dismiss it as soft, sentimental, besides the point. Now, if you bristle, I want you to notice that the bristle is the wound, and the wound is what got skipped past every time the adult in your life moved straight from your behavior to their reaction without ever stopping to make sure that you knew you were okay underneath it. This is a message your nervous system is still organized around the absence of. Every email you reread, every standard you can't loosen, every compliment you can't take, they're all the same nervous system, still looking for proof that you are, in fact, good. Not good at things, just good. Now, with that foundation, let's talk about specific patterns that keep type 1s in the loop. And there are 5. So pattern 1, confusing the inner critic with your conscience. The inner critic sounds like your conscience. It uses moral language. It says should and shouldn't, right, wrong. So you start to trust it. You assume that if it's criticizing you, the criticism must be valid or at least worth hearing. Well, it isn't. Your actual conscience is quieter, it's calmer, it's more proportionate. Your conscience tells you the truth once. The inner critic tells it to you 17 times and gets meaner each round. If a voice in your head is repetitive, contemptuous, or talks to you in a tone you would never tolerate from another human being, that isn't your conscience. That's the old supervisor still on duty, still trying to keep you safe from a danger that ended decades ago. Pattern 2, treating exhaustion as evidence of virtue. So somewhere along the line, you absorb the idea that being tired means you're doing it right, that the harder you push, the more you've earned. So you keep going past the point of usefulness. You don't rest until rest is forced on you by illness or breakdown, and then you feel guilty during the rest because you're not earning anything. Now, the pattern here is depletion has become a moral category for you. You feel righteous when you're empty. You feel suspicious of yourself when you're full. This is one of the most expensive patterns in type 1 because it determines the shape of your entire life. Pattern 3, the resentment you don't admit to. You do more than your share. You always have. You don't make a big deal about it, but underneath, very quietly, you keep a ledger. You know who isn't pulling their weight at work. You know which family member hasn't called. You know which friend always cancels. And you don't say anything because saying something would be petty. So the resentment builds and it leaks out as tone, as coldness, as clipped responses, as the slow, almost invisible withdrawal of warmth from the people who've been failing your standards. And they feel it. They don't know what they did. You don't tell them. Their relationship cools by degrees, and you tell yourself it's their fault. Pattern 4, using improvement as a substitute for intimacy. You don't know how to be close to people without trying to improve them or yourself. So self-development becomes a kind of intimacy avoidance. As long as you're working on you, you don't have to be you in front of anyone. As long as you're working on the relationship, you don't have to be in it as it is. And here's the trap. Every book, every program, every retreat, every Enneagram video, including this one, all of them can become the next way to delay the moment of actually accepting yourself and your life as they currently exist. Growth becomes the new perfectionism. Pattern 5, mistaking control for responsibility. You think you're responsible. What you actually are, a lot of the time, if we're being honest, is controlling. The two look similar from the outside, but they feel completely different from the inside. So responsibility is taking ownership of what's yours. Control is trying to manage what isn't. Type 1s blur the line constantly, and then they feel exhausted carrying things that were never theirs to carry. The question that breaks this open, whose job is this actually? Most type 1s can't ask it without flinching because the honest answer usually is not mine, and letting go feels like negligence. Now, under real pressure, type 1s don't get more rigid. That's a common misunderstanding. Under real pressure, you collapse into the opposite direction towards an unhealthy side of a type 4. And what this actually feels like is you go quiet, you withdraw, you become moody, melancholy, fixated on what's wrong with you specifically, not in the productive, fixable way, but in a heavier way. Why am I like this? Why can't I get it together? Everyone else has it all figured out. Something is wrong with me. It's self-criticism that stopped being functional and turned into something closer to self-loathing. And you may also become uncharacteristically emotional, tearful, hypersensitive to perceived slight. The anger that usually holds tight starts to leak. And instead of it leaking outward as frustration, it leaks inward as despair. So if you've ever wondered why you sometimes go from competent, capable woman who has the life all figured out and together to can't get out of bed and everything feels pointless with what feels like no transition, That's the 1 to 4 stress move. It's not personality flip. It's the cost of running a system that demands perfection from a human being who can't deliver it forever. The growth direction is the healthy side of a type 7. And the way 7 function at their best isn't what most type 1s expect. It's not about becoming carefree or lowering your standards. It's not about partying for crazy nights and being spontaneous for its own sake. The healthy 7 energy you're integrating is something a little more specific. It's permission to enjoy your life. It's permission to follow curiosity without justifying it, to take pleasure in something just because it's pleasurable, to be in the moment without simultaneously evaluating the moment. It's permission to make plans based on what would be fun rather than what would be productive, to laugh at yourself instead of indicting yourself. This is a part of you that got benched in childhood, the playful one, the one who didn't have a job. So integration towards a 7 is not about adding something new to your personality. It's about finally letting that part of you come back to the table. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the practical behavioral specifics, not practicing self-compassion, actual shifts. All right, so shift 1 is separate the inner critic from the conscience by name. Give the inner critic a name, and not a cute name, a name that creates a real distance between you and the critic, something that lets you hear her without merging with her. When she starts, you can say, "Hey, Margaret, I hear you. You're not doing this right now. I know it sounds small, but it isn't." The act of naming her is the act of recognizing she isn't you. And that's the entire foundation of the work. Once she's separate from you, you can start to ask, is this my conscience speaking, or is this Margaret? Your conscience speaks once calmly and stops. Margaret speaks 17 times and escalates. If a voice in your head won't shut up about something small, it's Margaret. You can thank her and move on. Shift 2, practice deliberate imperfection in low-stake places. Pick something genuinely unimportant. Send the email without rereading it. Leave the bed unmade. Wear the outfit that you're not 100% sure about. Post the thing without rewriting it 4 times. This is nervous system work, not productivity advice. You're teaching your body in small doses that imperfection does not result in catastrophe. You can't argue Margaret out of her job. You have to show her that the danger isn't real, one tiny piece of evidence at a time. Shift 3, name the resentment before it leaks. If you're in a relationship, partner, friend, colleague, family, whatever, whichever one, and you notice the cool clipped tone showing up, I want you to stop and ask yourself, what am I quietly furious about that I haven't said out loud? It'll be there, it always is, and then say it cleanly once. I've been carrying X and it's not sustainable. I need Y. Not as a complaint, not as a moral indictment, just as a piece of information about you. The leak is what damages the relationship. The clean statement almost never does. Shift number 4. Track pleasure on purpose. Most type 1s can list 100 things they need to do this week and 0 things they're looking forward to. I want you to reverse it once a week. Schedule 1 thing, small, specific, that has no productivity value. Not a workout that counts as self-care, not reading a book you'll learn from, something genuinely useless and good, like music or a walk with no destination, sitting outside, a bad movie. And then this is the part. Don't earn it first. Don't finish the list before. Don't tell yourself you'll do it once everything else is handled. Do it before. Let your nervous system register that pleasure is not a reward for completion. It's part of you being human. And shift 5. Ask, whose job is this? Out loud, once a day, when you catch yourself about to take on something, I want you to pause and ask, whose job is this? Actually, if it's yours, obviously do it. But if it's not, I want you to leave it. Even when leaving it feels wrong, even when leaving it means it doesn't get done, even when leaving it means someone you love has to live with the consequences of their own choices. This is the hardest one. It's also the one that creates the most space. Most of the burnout in type 1's life comes from carrying things that were never theirs to carry. Putting them down is not negligence. It's accuracy. If you're watching this for a type 1 in your life, a partner, a mother, a daughter, a friend, here's how to love them well. What they need to hear, said directly, more than once, in a tone that lands as true, is this. I see how hard you're trying. You don't have to earn this. You're allowed to be tired. I love you when you're not at your best too. That last one matters most. Type 1s have spent their whole lives believing love arrives in response to performance. The single most healing thing you can do is communicate repeatedly in moments where they aren't at their best, when they've dropped the ball, when they're cranky, when they've made a real mistake, that you love them anyway. That's the message they needed at 5. They still need it now. Now, here's what I want you to avoid. Don't tell them to relax. Don't tell them they're being too hard on themselves and expect that to land. They already know, and being told to stop won't move it. Don't pile criticism on top of criticism they're already running internally. Don't bring problems without also bringing appreciation. And do not ever use their high standards as ammunition in an argument. It is the most defended part of who they are, and it is also the most wounded. So here's what works. Specificity. Don't say you're amazing. Say the way you handled X yesterday was the thing that made it work. Type 1s mistrust general praise. They trust observed evidence. The story Type 1 has been telling herself her whole life is, I have to keep working on myself because if I stop, I'll be exposed as a flawed person, and I'm afraid I actually am. Now, the truer story is this. You were never the flawed thing. The fear of being flawed was the flaw, or actually, more accurately, it was the wound. It was a small child's intelligent response to an environment that didn't give her enough unconditional regard to grow up trusting she was okay as she was. You are not your inner critic. You're the person the inner critic has been guarding. And the work for the rest of your life isn't to silence her or improve yourself out of existence. It's to slowly and patiently retire the inner critic, to let her know that the child she was protecting is grown now, that the danger ended a long time ago, that the inner critic can finally rest. And you're allowed to be in process. You're allowed to be a woman who makes mistake and is also good. Those two things were never in conflict. They were only ever in conflict in the room you grew up in. They are not in conflict in the life you're building now. If this video moved something in you, and I'm guessing it did because part 2 always hits Type 1s differently than part 1, I want you to tell me about it in the comments. Specifically, what came up around the childhood message? What did you need to hear that you didn't? I read every single comment. All right, subscribe so that the rest of the 9-part series shows up. Each type gets the same 2-part treatment, and there's a real chance the type you watch next, the one you don't think is you, is the one that explains a corner of your life that you haven't been able to figure out. If you want to go deeper on your own specific type and wing and subtypes, not as a general overview, but as a personalized session that maps it into your actual life, your actual relationships, the patterns you've been trying to shift, that's what I do in my Enneagram deep dive. So for that, the link is in the description. It's the closest thing I have to handing you a manual for your own nervous system. Now remember, you're not too much. You're a Type 1 in process. The work isn't to become someone else. The work is to come home to the woman who has already been good before anyone told her she had to earn it first. Okay, I will see you in the next one.